We are live.
This is Senate Appropriations. It's January 21st. We're going through Budget Adjustment Act requests. We have legislative operations in today, legislative council about the things that they're making there. So I'll let you introduce yourself for the record and tell us the change that we're looking at.
Great, we'll do. So, hello, committee, to you all. For the record, Brent here, Director and Chief Counsel of Legislative Council, here to talk to you about 10 pages of statutory changes that are being proposed to be included in the budget adjustment bill this session. So I'm here. I'm going to back up and start a little bit at the beginning, but I promise I'm not going to take a whole bunch of time.
It's 10 pages, but it's one sheet.
It's 10 pages, and I'm proposing not really talking to you about what's in those. It's not going through the language specifically, but rather just giving you an overview of why it's there, what it does, and a little bit of history. So this is the result of some staff organizational changes that your staff directors worked on over the summer. And brought as a proposal to the Joint Legislative Management Committee, which is the committee that oversees legislative staff and is also specifically tasked with doing any reallocations of staff, like approving reallocations of existing staff positions, approving any new staff positions, et cetera. So your Joint Legislative Management Committee, the vote on the proposal from the directors, and that proposal is essentially what you see in these 10 pages of language. So the history of this, about 5 years ago, some of you might remember, the General Assembly staff were organized into 5 distinct offices, and those included the House Clerk and Senate Secretary, the Sergeant at Arms, Legislative Council, and Joint Fiscal. And at that time, the Legislative Council encompassed your legal staff, your IT services staff, your committee services staff, and your operations staff. So it housed a whole bunch under that Legislative Council umbrella. In 2020, you underwent a restructuring initiative that separated IT out into its own distinct office. And then it separated committee services and operations staff into its own distinct office, which was called the Office of Legislative Operations. And a new director position was established to oversee the operations work and the operations staff. So just prior to the last session, the 2025 session, you might remember that Mike Front, the former director of legislative operations, departed for another position. And given the timing of that departure, your staff directors sort of came together and decided timing was not right to conduct an immediate search, and instead we transferred the remaining operations staff to the supervision of Scott Moore, who you will speak to next, on an interim basis, which would give your staff time to sort of analyze whether or not we could absorb the rest of the operations staff, so you didn't have to hire another director position. And so essentially we collaborated over the summer and determined that we could absorb those staff. So the operations unit, which formerly consisted of that director position and 3 full-time supporting staff members, also all committee assistants during the session, have been transferred to the Office of Legislative Counsel. And the fiscal support responsibilities that legislative operations provided before have been transferred to the Joint Fiscal Office. So this change that you see in the legislative language before you has been operational and in effect since for about 9 months. We have sort of undertook this change halfway through the last session, and we have been operating this way since then. So we brought this proposal to the Joint Legislative Management Committee, gave it as a formal proposal. Joint Legislative Management Committee voted on it and directed that we put together the legislative language that would carry out this new organizational structure for the operations duties and present it as a proposal for the budget adjustment bill to the Appropriations Committees. That is what you see before you in those 10 pages of legal language. And I am more than happy to go through the language itself quickly or not so quickly, however you would like me to do it. Talk about it, but I can summarize overall by saying what it does. It repeals the chapter in Title II, the legislature title that created the Office of Legislative Operations. And it reallocates the duties that were formerly assigned to legislative operations, to legislative council, and to JFO, where appropriate.
So
So
are we going back to the way it was in the teeth, except for IT?
that's exactly right. So essentially, we're going back to a 6 office model rather than a 5 office model, which was the pre-2000 model. We are going to a 6 office model where legislative council encompasses committee services and administrative responsibilities. And it's a little bit new because JFO now has 1 additional staff person, 1.5. And also a piece of the administrative responsibilities, which is the expense reporting thing that are all very important for your reimbursements.
And IT is still separate?
And IT remains its own office separate. Yeah. So you started as a 5 office model, you went to a 7 office model, and now you're going to a 6 office model.
And there's no budget ramification. Even though
No significant budget implication, but Scott is here to talk more about that.
any questions for the director of legislative council? Yes, Senator Watson.
Thank you. So when it was a, how's it arranged? It was just,
So it was, pre-2000, pre the restructuring that created the Office of Legislative Operations. It was the House Clerk and Senate Secretary and the Sergeant at Arms, and then just the two other staff offices were JFO and Legislative Council. So Legislative Council had oversight over IT, committee services, and operations.
And I-
Legal staff.
recalling that you said that, you just, so thank you.
Yeah.
And then one further question, which is that, so this language that we have in our agenda today, so this is potential language that would be baked into the VA.
And the House is moving it into the,
Oh, it is. Super interesting.
so we're getting, we could have waited till the bill came over, but we'll be prepared.
It's a good chunk of the bill itself, though.
Right, I heard you doubled the size of the VA.
I don't think that's quite true. That's a great chunk.
Okay,
I am happy to go through the language anytime.
it looked like you were just changing wherever it said
It's quite
operations, you
straightforward.
struck that out.
It's quite straightforward. There are a couple of places where specific duties are reallocated to legislative council or to jail. And yes. But that is primarily what it does.
Okay, thanks. Scott, if you had testimony you wanted to provide on this. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Scott Morgan at Fiscal Office. To answer your question, Mr. Chair, about the budget implications, if you look in the budget we passed last year, the legislative budget, we have all of the clerk of the Senate and everybody else, it was $26,044,703. After you make this change, the total budget will be $26,044,703. So effectively, all we're doing is, and there's a memo that having to communicate, we're taking $837,000 out of the legislative branch line item, and we're reallocating some of that to JFO and some of that to the Dutch Council. So that really is net zero. There's nothing that changes in terms of the dollars. It's just a matter of we're having the money to follow the people, so we can pay the people. For the people are in different business units as the technology.
Is that the same number of positions or did you change the number?
If you know the same number, the positions will be the same.
Okay.
It's literally just, for instance, all the committee assistants that were being paid by this business unit, now they're being paid by that business unit. And we want to make sure that the money flows over that new FID to make sure there's money to pay them at the end of the session.
So like with what Veron, that position was gone, but basically the position was just recreated under a different title.
Correct. And with that new position, I'm sorry, that same position ID number is still in the legislative budget. We haven't removed it. We're looking at it basically to say at the end of this session, how to go. And if we need to hire another person to help out, let's council JFO or the different duties, we have that position number already. It would not be a director position, it's easy to keep that.
It's in the budget, so
But
you don't have it in there as a vacancy station, you have it in there.
correct, but we, in the FY27 budget, we had the total dollar amount, so there's less of a budget impact because we're not funding the full director position.
You hired it to have less. responsibilities, so it'll be a lower cost.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Norris.
Yeah, Scott, just a quick one. I know a year or so ago, I had conversations. And are you happy with the way the system is set up now? Or it's in reference to what you folks do and what Vision does? Is there something you'd like to slide one way or the other or?
I can attest to the fact that now that I'm in charge of making sure that all the legislators have their salary and their expenses, I'm one of the most popular people in the building. But I think some of that, I will defer a little bit to Kathy, my boss. By the end of the session, we're hoping that my picking up a lot of the expenses on other things are not affecting the office's ability to do the fiscal notes and the other fiscal responsibilities that I had 2 sessions ago. So far this session, I feel like I have more bandwidth than I did last session, in part because we did shift a lot of the responsibility. Bryn's department took a lot, and JFO's taking a smaller part. Would we need someone? I don't know. So if we needed to have the position, right now things feel comfortable, but it's early. I don't see how the decision goes.
I think you're going to bang it.
Thanks, sir.
And that's not just because you approve this. Any other questions? All right, thank you. You're looking forward.
Thank you.
All right, Tim, you like to come on?
Thank you. Doug in from the State Treasurer's Office, Director of the Vermont Retirement Systems. With me today is Jeremiah Greer. He's our Chief Financial Officer, and Ivan Shum. She's our new legislative intern who just started this week. She's here helping us in the State House this session. I just tried to join the Zoom meeting, and I have a slide presentation that I can use to help present what's going on today.
I don't have anybody in my Zoom room, so let me resend you the link just in case there's a little message.
Bottom line, we are seeking $3 million in the BAA to fund the teachers' pension costs. That request is coming because our federal grant assumptions for what we would receive this year are turning out to have been a little too high. I think everyone knows what's happening at the federal level, that grant funding, especially in the education space, is coming down. And so we're having to reorient to that reality. And what I was hoping to do today, and join now, was just walk you through what that federal grant assessment is and how it works to offset the state teachers' pension costs. And then the reason for the ask, if that makes sense. So just pull up that.
Go.
So talking about the federal grant assessment, what is it? This was put in place in 2016 and put the statutory reference in there. It's basically a charge against a federal grant where that grant funds the teacher's salary. So if a teacher's in the school and they're being funded by a federal grant, let's just for ease of reference and say they make $100,000. In the past, before 2016, there would be no pension costs funded under that grant. So the state goes up. So the legislature put this assessment in place to help offset some of the costs of funding our pension system. And so what we do is each year, Jeremiah's team, they set the rate that is going to be applied to a teacher's salary. So in 26, that rate is 25.47%. So if that teacher is making $100,000 coming from a federal grant, there's an extra 25,000 that will also come from
an indirect rate on the federal.
Exactly. Yeah. And so school districts pay that into our office, but the whole system is on a lag because we need to have information about what that teacher was actually paid. They report quarterly into our system. So we have information at the end of the first quarter in October. And then once we have information about what teachers were actually paid, Jeremiah's team can then start billing schools, and then school districts start remitting those costs. So we're at present, we're just getting the first quarter receipts from fiscal 26. And when we were setting this rate, it was way back in, lead up to the budget in the fall winter of last year. So that's why we're in this place, because we have a whole lag in the system, and so we're reacting to what's going on in the past. A little more background on how this fits into funding. So just a reminder, the state pays the employer costs for the teacher system. The amount that the actuaries tell us that is needed for the current year has two parts. It has the normal cost. That's basically the cost to fund this year's benefit. And it has the unfunded liability payment, and that's the annual cost that you have to pay down our legacy unfunded liability. The FGA offsets those two amounts in proportion. So if the normal cost is 20% of the total ADEC, then about 20% of the FGA revenues go to that, and the balance goes to the unfunded liability. You'll recall that part of Act 114, the pension reform legislation a couple years ago, there's a third payment going into the pension systems. That's what we refer to as the plus payment. This year, and until the systems are 90% funded, that's $15 million above that, not impacted by the FGA. That kind of stands outside the actuarially determined amount that has to go into the system.
And the other thing, the other ADEC thing, is it all in payroll, or does it?
The state system?
Yeah, or does it get paid in a chunk, or it's just like part of payroll?
For the teacher system, it gets paid in a chunk. The state makes that payment early in the fiscal year. Yeah. But then it makes less than what's needed, and the federal grants come in throughout the year to make up
For
that.
state employees, it's just all payroll.
It's payroll. Yeah, there's the percentage of payroll. I think this year it might be 28, and that amount just is applied to the biweekly payroll. So this is the FY26 total aid. You'll see there it's 212.75 million. And the two parts that I talked about, 41.4 is the ongoing cost to just fund this year's benefit. 107.1 is the legacy part that we're looking to have fully paid down by 2038, though. We're looking at funding task force to evaluate that funding policy, and we'll be talking to you about that in our treasurer's office at another point. So then what we have there is the two components of how we get to that 212.7 million. We have the FGA amounts. That's what we were estimating over a year ago, to be $13.4 million. And the balance is picked up by the state. And I just put the references to the big bills so we have them. And then this is really the chart that I think is important here. If you look at our projections, historically conservative, that's the green lines going out. And then particularly when you see, 22 through 24, I mean, it's big ESSER time period. Folks remember all the federal funds put in the schools during that period. And so revenues really outpaced our projections. And just as the revenues were falling off, our projections kind of caught up with that higher reality. And now we're having to pivot. So in the 27 budget that you'll be taking out, our projection is much, instead of 13.375, that's 8. But for this year, there's a concern.
And is that a recommendation that you give to the governor, or do they really decide the final number?
Jeremiah's team.
I'm talking over there, but that's both the governor and
Yeah.
There is some back and forth with the budget office. So we provide, so we do a projection and we provide a number. And then, kind of like with everything that we present to the governor, they opine and decide on finally what they're going to present and the governor recommend, but it is informed by the budget submission from the treasurer's office.
Thank you. And for the record.
I'm Jeremiah Greer. I'm the chief financial officer at State Treasury.
Okay. So Jeremiah and team flagged this issue last spring, at the time of the budget, when, we first started seeing we started seeing FY 25 FGA revenues, we were a couple quarters in at that point in the budget and kind of saw them starting to fall precipitously. Came over to the legislature to flag the issue, and you folks put a $3.8 million reserve to backfill any amounts needed in fiscal 25 and 26. Fortunately, no additional funds were needed in fiscal 25, so we still have that full $3.8 million in reserve for this purpose. But the revenue projection, we've revised down again from where we were before. And so we're currently thinking we're thinking it might be 6.5 million, but Jeremiah can attest, not having all of quarter one in, we are admittedly at a very early stage here.
So at this point, you still want us for quarter one of the state fiscal year?
We have, correct, we have partial.
Is that normal or is this something that happens?
That is quite typical. Yeah, so I think there are 54 entities and I think we have 30 something of them. So we have, a plurality of the entities are reporting. It also is limited data because the first quarter is not a full quarter, right? So the first quarter of July, August, and September, obviously, but the schools start, in late August. So yeah, but that lag is typical, and it's due to the fact that we have to close the systems on our end, and then we have to get the bills out and report back. And to be frank, there is perhaps some lag in just the way that the districts, report to us.
So we have a limited sample size right now, but the issue is presenting in that limited sample size, and we wanted to raise it to you as soon as possible in the Budget Adjustment Act. So that's why we're requesting the additional $3 million. And as I mentioned before, the projection for FY 27 that's currently in the budget is $2 million. We need to watch that. So it's something that we will be monitoring and apprising you of as the session develops, which just wanted to explain. Worked with JFO and have some recommended language for your consideration. What this does is build on the model that this body used in the big bill last year to add that additional $3 million.
As far as this language that you're proposing, going in the House, putting it in the House version of the.
We made this presentation last week to House Appropriations.
And you book this as a reserve. That how it's actually kept on the books, because then you could use it or not use it depending.
It's an appropriation. And I think we have language so that the appropriation carries forward indefinitely. And then we will only use the amount of money that is necessary, which is why. So we got a 3.8 million last year, and then we ended up not having to use any of that. So we have that, and then we need to add 3 million to that pot.
You're not really creating a special fund reserve.
No, it's like essentially a one-time appropriation that doesn't expire.
It just will. And you have to carry forward language in it.
Okay. And I think some of the reason is if you were to just appropriate it into the pension funds, you can't take it back out at that point. So I think what this is doing is to make sure that it's there if needed, but not there if not needed.
Okay.
And finally, I will be remiss if I didn't point out to Mr. Roop's fiscal note or issue brief, I think it's called, on how this system works. He's got a great description in the link here. So I would commend it to your attention if you have any other questions on federal grants assistance.
Okay. Maybe we could add that to our committee page.
Yes, definitely.
Under this, yes, Senator Watson.
Yes, okay, so on the slide with the graph, I've got it already, but with the orange and green bars, so you had mentioned that actually one thing that I'm not clear on is this is the district's federal grant assessment. So this federal grant this is money coming into us, and I guess I am wondering about the comparing that with the slide where you have the boxes for the normal cost. I guess what I'm saying is we're projecting $8 million for 27. And so that's less than even what is projected for 2025 or 26. And so, where does the difference come from? Does that make sense?
So for the 26 right now, we're projecting 6.5, and that's based on what we're seeing so far.
Okay.
We budgeted for it.
We budgeted for, in 26, we budgeted 13.375 and we're now thinking it's going to be basically half of that. So,
okay.
And so that's where we are for this year. For next year, I think there's some amount of inflation that's going into the $8 million. I think we had a robust discussion in the office about what the projection should be. But knowing that we'd be in for talking with you about this year, I think we were comfortable and in conversations with the administration landing on 8. And so there's some amount of art to this. It's a shifting environment at the federal level, so you're also trying to predict what's happening.
Well, and is that 8 million, theoretically, if we got that, is that used effectively like immediately? Is that sort of like in and out the door?
So
Or is that going to pay down?
that's coming in to satisfy the annual ADEC requirement.
Okay.
And so, but from a practical standpoint, the money we get from the legislature, so that 199, that comes in right away in a big one big lump.
Yes, okay.
Right? That's a big payment right away in the year. But then the that 8 million or the 13.375 in this example trickles in starting around this time. So and it actually still comes in after the end of the fiscal year. We're still catching up to it. So we can't bill it until we know what's actually charged against a grant at a school level. So that's why there's this whole lag that forces it to come in after the fact. But the purpose of it is always to meet that 212 in the leftmost box.
Right.
That's the amount the actuary is telling us we need to fund the pensions in a way that's consistent with state statute.
And so, if I'm understanding correctly, so if that number continues to go down, then we're just gonna have to make that up with the state payment.
Exactly.
Is that okay?
And it splits between the ed fund and the general fund.
Right, and the ADEC amount does, well, maybe, does that shifts over time, or is that?
It's the ADEC shifts every year. The fiscal year ends, and then our actuaries get all the data, demographic and financial from the fiscal year, and they revalue our system. It's called our annual valuation, and in that valuation, that's where these two numbers are developed. One of the, I think, really encouraging signs from this year on the pension side is that, where those amounts used to go up substantially every year, it was pretty much at inflation. I think the teacher's system was maybe 3.6 or 3.7% over last year, and the state system was maybe 2.6%. So on the pension side, those costs are pretty much out of inflation. So that's pretty flat. The retiree healthcare side, as with everything in healthcare, it's a difference.
Yeah.
When you say our actuaries, those are contracted actuaries.
They are, yes. The boards of the retirement systems retain a consulting firm. Siebel Consulting is who it is right now. And they're the ones that perform it. We don't have any state employed actuaries.
And what did we do in 15? Just like all this federal money, they just allowed it to go all towards salary, and we just paid the retirement benefit.
It was before my time. I imagine it kind of caught up to what we're doing on the state side, because we use for a lot of our state employees, if their transportation comes in or something, we're going to use some of those funds to help fund the total ADEC on the state side.
Right.
So I imagine there's some amount of doing it over here. It's sort of over here too.
Okay. All right. Well, I really expect we will see this in the budget adjustment. And have you talked to the administration? We'll hear from them, but I assume they're supportive of this. They're not.
We've made them aware of the request.
So here's one first. Okay, so there was.
One more question. So in the language that you have in terms of carrying it forward, more or less indefinitely, just thinking about the end, let's say everything goes ideally and we get to 2038 and we're about to pay it off. Does the need for that reserve remain? Or does the need for, could we use that to pay the remaining? Does that make
Yes,
sense?
this money is only used if at the end of the year, when we're closing out, we realize that the federal grants amount has not come in as expected. That's the only reason. Otherwise, it can be used and redirected at this body's level. Yeah. It's only when you put it into the pension fund specifically that you limit that.
Okay, so this reserve is live somehow inside that pension.
No, the reserve actually goes to the secretary, to the agency of administration.
Yeah, okay. On a related point, this dynamic where we're setting the budget and then we're doing that, ahead of time and we don't have the data and then we need the, right amount of money to make the ADAC. This will continue into the future. So I mean, every year we're going to have this discussion where we potentially need to set aside some money to make sure that we have enough to fill any, backfill into the federal grant system.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. In the past, we were very conservative projections, and so we would overfund, and that's a good thing for the pension funding, but it's also funds going to place if somebody wanted them to go somewhere else. So I think this kind of ties it more closely. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to have that.
Right. Any other questions? Looks like that was pretty straightforward. Thanks for your time.
Great.
I need to leave for sure.
Okay,
And then
we
when
won't take it personally.
she comes back,
Okay.
you're gonna say.